Welcome to our webinar on global migration. I'm Thomas Kemper. I'm the General Secretary for Global Ministries of the United Methodist Church. And I'm actually a migrant myself, a very privileged migrant because I was born in Germany. I lived in many parts of the world and for the last 7 years here in the United States. And what has been a blessing for my life, migration, because the Methodist Church in Germany really is a church which was started by migrants. There were migrants that left Germany for the United States to find a better life, to survive really in difficult times in Germany. And they found the predecessor communities and churches of what is today the United Methodist Church. And then some of them decided to go back to Germany and tell the good news they had experienced, the communities they had found, Jesus Christ, the Methodist tradition, and shared it literally with their brothers and sisters in Germany. And I would not be sitting here today if it had not been this blessing of migration in my life. 65 million people are displaced, are migrants today in this world, the highest number ever since World War II. Can you imagine that every 5 seconds a person in this world is being displaced? Men and women and children have to leave their home and their country because of violence, because of climate change, because they just cannot survive in the environment where they are. And we at the United Methodist Church have decided, because we are involved in so many places in migrant ministries, that we should dedicate one Sunday especially to these people and to our solidarity with migrants around the world. The United Methodist Church has decided to dedicate the first Sunday in December of this year as United Methodist Global Migration Sunday. The decision was made because in so many parts of the world, our church is engaged in ministries with refugees and with migrants. And we felt it was important as the Council of Bishops, the leadership of the church, they said we should really create more awareness for migrants. We also decided to create the opportunity for an offering which will support ministries with migrants all around the world. And we want to pray for migrants and be in solidarity and united in prayer in many languages and in many services that will happen around the United Methodist Connection on that Sunday. They are coming to you from all over the world. And first we have Rico Esquerra. I met Rico for the first time in Dubai when I visited the United Arab Emirates. And you might be surprised, as I was, that we have Methodist-related migrant ministries in the United Arab Emirates. Thank you, Rico, for sharing your amazing experience with us.
My name is Enrico Esquerra. Presently, I am the chairperson of the Board on Ordained Ministry of the Philippines Annual Conference and a former administrative assistant of the Bishop of the Manila Episcopal Area. It is my joy and privilege to share to you the United Methodist Church in United Arab Emirates, the amazing work of our Lord Jesus Christ in the Middle East. By God's grace, I will share to you the migrants, their works and roles, the birth of the United Methodist Church in United Arab Emirates, the District Migrant Ministry, and the UAE, United Methodist Church Vision 2020, the first UAE district of the United Methodist Church in the Middle East, possible within the same time of UAE Dubai Expo 2020. Over the past few decades, the United Arab Emirates, one of the world's preeminent oil-rich nations, located in the Gulf Cooperation Council region, has become a popular destination for temporary labor migrants seeking employment opportunities and higher standards of living. The UAE relies heavily on migrant labor with an estimated 8 million migrant workers making up more than 80% of its population, with many domestic workers hired from Southeast Asia. The biggest bulk of population in the UAE came from India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Egypt, and Philippines. Majority of the migrants go other countries for greener pastures. Expats see UAE among the top careers destinations in the world. HSBC research shows UAE the best country in Middle East and Asia for a successful expat career. Filipino migrants go to work to other countries in order to better provide for their family needs and to increase the family's purchasing power and quality of living. They do this by remittances, which helps improve the economy of the Philippines. Overseas Filipino workers in UAE are among the major contributors to economic growth in the Philippines. Because of this, Knox United Methodist Church, through the vision of Mrs. Lucy and Mr. June Sermonia, decided to send a missionary to Dubai to gather the flock and to plant a United Methodist Church in UAE. However, this proved to be difficult because of the many problems encountered by the migrant workers as well as the members. These migrant workers sacrifice a lot for the opportunity to work abroad, living out of their comfort zones and to the unfamiliar grounds where they are treated not as guests but as workers. Some experience health issues due to overwork, lack of proper housing, financial indebtedness, and some are even maltreated by their employers. Despite of this, some of the problems were overcome. In 2007, the first United Methodist Church Dubai was organized. The church has given the opportunity to minister with the migrant workers. The church was able to welcome them as family, treating them as guests, having fellowship, sharing food and blessing, group support, care groups, prayer, and healing ministry. Many were transformed and from being nominal Christian to thirsty souls longing for the presence of God. Today, we have 9 assigned pastors shepherding the flock at UAE, 2 elders who are full-time workers, and 7 pastors who are also tent makers. We have organized 3 new local churches in 3 years' time, and on the 107th regular session of the Philippine Annual Conference, during the report of the District Superintendent on April 25, 2017, it was approved and organized the Mission District of United Arab Emirates of the United Methodist Church. UAE Mission District is composed of 4 local churches, namely the First United Methodist Church Dubai, organized in 2007, UMC Abu Dhabi, organized last 2015, Sharjah UMC, organized in 2016, and Oasis of Grace UMC Barsha, organized in 2017. There are 4 mission congregations, namely Al-Ain Mission, Fujairah Mission, Ras Al Khaimah Mission, Ajman Mission, and the newly opened mission for Zimbabwe Nigerian National. I observed that the ministry of our pastors with the migrants are both challenging and rewarding. Challenging because they have to abide by the laws of UAE, although the UAE constitutions guarantees the freedom to exercise religious worship in accordance with established customs on condition that it does not conflict with public policy or violate public morals, and the government restricted religious freedom in practice. In UAE, Christians are free to worship in an area provided by the government and conduct Bible study in their home as long as this does not disrupt other people and other religion. Other rules for Christian churches are conducting worship service outside the designated area is punishable by imprisonment. Giving gospel tracts, reading the Bible in public transports, and sharing the gospel to Muslims and converting them to become Christians are prohibited. Through God's guidance, the mission in the Arab nation was made possible by doing some practical approach that help overcome these challenges. These practical approaches to make the mission possible in Arab nation are abiding with the country's laws and regulation, assuring the government that the intention of the church and fellowship is good, and praying earnestly for the country's continuous growth and success. During the time when worshipping outside designated areas in the UAE was prohibited, like in hotels and in restaurants, it was this time when the congregation earnestly prayed for a secured place of worship, and after almost a year of praying, their application for a slot at the Anglican churches in the UAE was approved, and our congregation in Dubai, Sharjah, and Al Ain were given a slot at the main sanctuaries of the Anglican compound. Finally, we encourage you all to fervently pray with us so that the mission in UAE will continue to flourish. By God's graciousness, let us expect the first United Arab Emirates District Conference of the Philippines Annual Conference in 2020. In behalf of the Mission District of UAE, UMC family, thank you so much. May God continue to bless, empower, and strengthen us all. Amen.
From the United Arab Emirates, we are now moving to Europe, to Italy. And the very small Valdensian Methodist Church has an amazing ministry among and in solidarity with migrants. And Julia, we are happy to have you and to let us know what the church is doing there in Italy. Thank you.
My name is Giulia Gori, and I work for the Federation of Protestant Churches in Italy. I've been asked to give a short presentation about refugees in Europe and in Italy specifically. How many refugees we have in Europe? The number of refugees in Europe is about 5.2 million, which is about 0.69% of the whole European population. The number of refugees in Italy is about 147,000, which is a limited number, considering that other countries, such as Germany, have about more than 600,000 refugees, and in France, more than 300,000 refugees. In Italy, we have about 147,000 refugees, meaning 0.2% of the Italian population. So although the dominant narrative on refugees in Italy suggesting there is an invasion, an emergency, the numbers show that another picture. And if you gather all the refugees present in Italy in the same place, they would not manage to fill the two main Italian stadiums. So really, it's not a huge number. Where refugees arriving to Italy are from. They are mainly from Syria, Afghanistan, and Africa. And the majority of these refugees, they even do not reach Europe and Italy, but they cross the border, and they remain staying in the poor neighboring countries, hosting thousands and thousands of refugees. And how do migrants enter Europe? Mainly by sea. The route by sea is the most used 7 times out of 10. They cross the Sahara, the desert, in order to reach the Libyan coast, and they try to cross the Mediterranean and reach Italy. And it takes many, many months, sometimes years, before reaching the Libyan coast, because people are trafficked and detained in each state they cross. In Niger, in Sudan, in Libya, and they are kidnapped and they have to pay the local militia in order to be released. Even this first part of their travel, the crossing of the desert, it takes many, many, many months. And at the end, some of them manage to reach the Libyan coast in order to continue their journey and cross the Mediterranean Sea and then try to arrive to Europe. When they cross the Mediterranean Sea, the traffickers use really unseaworthy ships. The crossing of the Mediterranean, even if it's a very short distance between the Libyan coast and Sicily and Italy, it might take days before reaching the Italian coast. the average journey arrived to cost up to $2,900 US just to be on that kind of ship. And if they want a blanket, considering that the journey might last for up to 4 or 5 days, they have to pay extra money. Or if they want some water, they have to pay an extra $100. And if they want to stay on the deck of the ship in order not to be stepped on by other people, they have to pay extra money. So you can imagine the situation, the condition of the journey. People coming from Afghanistan, from Syria, they use what we call the Balkanian route. And then from there, they try to reach Northern Europe, Austria, and then Germany, and then Sweden. Many of these people, they even do not manage to arrive to Italian coast, and they die at sea. The number of deaths at sea in the Mediterranean from the 90s to last year is extremely high. It's 31,000 people who died at sea. And just during this year, 2017, we had already 2,093 people who died. Even if recently, after this summer, I have to say we had a sudden decrease of arrivals from Libya and consequently a sudden decrease of deaths at sea because of an agreement done by Italian government and Libyan government. Italy committed to providing equipment and military and strategic and technological support to Libyan government. And on the other side, Libya committed to block and control the departure of migrants from Libya, which is, I would say, unacceptable. Consider that Libya remains a country that has not ratified the Geneva Convention. And what happens is that Libyan government detain in detention center these people trying to cross Libya in order to reach European coast. So at the moment, the situation is that people do not die at sea anymore or in limited number, but they die in Libyan detention center. So the situation keeps extremely problematic. And within this general framework, the Federation of Protestant Churches, together with other Catholic association, Italian association, promoted 2 years ago a pilot program. And we managed to sign an agreement with the Italian government, and we managed to open a humanitarian corridor from Lebanon for Syrians in vulnerable situation in Lebanon, in Beirut and around. So they are allowed to board a regular flight, and we bring here these people, and we host, after their arrival, they have to apply for asylum, and we provide for them first reception in our reception center or in flats or in family churches. So many Italians, even not linked to Protestant church, to Valdensian Methodist Church, they decide to give their money to the Valdensian and Methodist Church, and they found our activities for 2018 and 19, and many other European member states are proposing similar corridors, similar program to their government in order to multiply the corridors and in order to offer a way of accessing to protection to people in need of protection. I hope that has been clear enough and have managed to give in a very short time a picture of the situation of refugees coming to Europe and to Italy. Thanks very much.
Thank you, Julia. That was really enlightening. And now we will hear from Rob from the United States.
Hello, my name is Rob Rutland Brown. I'm the Executive Director of National Justice for Our Neighbors. We are a United Methodist immigration ministry based in the United States, and our role is to provide immigration legal services to low-income immigrants and refugees who come from all over the world and who cannot afford private attorneys to access immigration legal services. What I'm going to be talking about briefly today is migration from Central America, a little bit about the reasons that people come from Central America to the United States. What are the ways that they can come in lawfully, and why folks would choose to come in unlawfully, and then what those options are for those immigrants once they're here in the United States, and how our ministry helps respond to their needs. You can see from this graph that migration, of course, from Central America to the United States has gone on for many, many years. It's outside of the scope of this quick talk to talk about some of the political and economic policies of the United States that have caused Central Americans hardship and perhaps caused them to need to migrate in the first place. But I do want to point out that in the 1980s, migration from Central America to the US nearly tripled. It went from about 350,000 immigrants to over 1.1 million just in the 1980s. That was due to civil war, political instability, and economic hardships. In the 90s, migration continued because of family unification, natural disasters that were occurring in Central America, as well as political and economic volatility. Flashing forward to 2015, there was over 3 million immigrants in the United States from Central America. That represents about 8% of all the immigrants that we have here in the United States. The most prevalent countries of origin of those Central American migrants by far are El Salvador, Guatemala, and Honduras. Those countries are referred to as the Northern Triangle. So how does one come to the United States from Central America? Well, it can be challenging, and we know there's a perception that folks should always just wait in line and come here the lawful way, but what I hope you'll see is that that's not always possible. So first of all, there are no refugees from those Central American countries who are eligible to come to the United States. Being a refugee is determined by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and it's an international body that makes that determination, and currently no countries from Central America qualify in that way. Some of you may have heard of something called temporary protected status, or TPS, and that's also not a way to come into the United States. What that refers to is for people who were already in the United States at the time of certain natural disasters from certain countries, they are allowed to obtain this status called TPS. So certain people from El Salvador do have TPS. Certain people from Honduras do have TPS here in the United States due to earthquakes and hurricanes that happened a long time ago. But they had to have already been here when that status started, and they're required to renew that status every 2 years. And so it's not a means of coming in for the first time. As an aside, we are doing some advocacy work to make sure that TPS can continue for people who have that status from those countries so that they don't lose status and become forced to return home to a country they've not lived in for quite some time. In addition, a common way to come to the United States is through an employer sponsor, but in general, you have to be highly educated, have very specific high skills in a field that's coveted by a U.S. sponsor, and then yes, you have to have a sponsor here in the United States. So for most Central Americans seeking to come to the United States, that's not going to be a realistic option. The most common way people come to the U.S. in general is through family-based sponsorship, and that would be for someone who's already in the United States, who's a U.S. citizen or a lawful permanent resident, a green card holder, to petition to bring their family member in from Central America. For those folks in Central America who are lucky enough to have a relative who are able to petition them, the lines can actually be exceedingly long for that. And I have a couple examples here. If you're a United States citizen and you have an unmarried son or daughter who lives in, say, Honduras that you want to petition, there's currently a 7-year wait. If that person lives in Mexico, it's a 21-year wait. Mexico's exceptionally long because of preference categories and the desire by the U.S. to have diverse representation here. If you are trying to bring in your married son or daughter and you're a United States citizen, it's a 12-year wait. and it's a 22-year wait if they're from Mexico. So you can see the lines can be very long, and if you're looking to bring in a child, they may no longer be a child by the time they're able to enter. Those are the main forms of being able to come in lawfully. Otherwise, there's not really a way to come to the United States. So one might ask, well, why would people try to come in illegally then, without papers, unlawfully? This slide is rather depressing, and I apologize, but it just speaks to some of the statistics about the violence going on, especially in those Northern Triangle countries that I referenced. El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, they have some of the highest levels of homicide, femicide, and violence around the world. El Salvador had the highest homicide rate in the world last year. San Salvador, which is the capital, was the third most violent city in the world 2 years ago. More than 1,000 children were violently killed in Honduras in 2015. In addition, 70% of small businesses in El Salvador have been victims of extortion. We're also seeing a rise in internal displacement within El Salvador and Honduras, and that's usually a precursor to forced migration. So in other words, a lot of the people who are fleeing Central America aren't doing so for a higher paying job, but they're really doing so to survive and to escape this pervasive violence. So if someone does come here and make it through Mexico into the United States without papers, what are their options? Well, people can choose to seek asylum, and that needs to be done generally within a year after having arrived into the U.S. And these are people who somehow made it to the U.S. either without papers or they came on some sort of temporary status and then overstayed that status. But if you're seeking asylum, you're basically saying, look, I have a fear of being persecuted or killed if I were forced to return home. And it's based on your race, your religion, your nationality, your membership of a particular social group, or of having a political opinion. Oftentimes it's because you feel like you're being targeted by the gangs in your home country because of the family that you're associated with, or something like that. And so that's one common immigration avenue. And if you obtain asylum, you can eventually get a green card and eventually get citizenship. Another way is through something called a T visa. These are for victims of severe trafficking. And again, if you're able to make the claim to immigration that you were trafficked, then you could get work authorization here in the U.S. and eventually get a green card. Another form is something called a U visa, and this applies to people who are in the U.S. without papers, who've been the victims of or witnesses to a very serious or violent crime, and who have worked with the police here in the U.S. In the prosecution. And the reason that this law exists is we don't want victims to be scared of coming forward to the police. And so it helps encourage people who have been victimized to come forward so that the offender can be brought to justice. Another group that I want to focus on is unaccompanied migrant children. These are kids who have come to the United States without a legal parent or guardian. They're under 18 years old. In 2014, in the summer, this became really big news. In June of that year, we were at a spike of 10,000 unaccompanied migrant children who had come to the United States. And it was really quite a scene. And actually, that number has remained really high. The only reason it hasn't probably gone up more is that there's this tougher border security on the Mexico border with with Guatemala and with Belize. And so it can be harder to even make it to the U.S. But these are kids who are typically fleeing gang violence. And once they're here in the U.S., they get placed with extended family, and then they have a court date. They wait for that court date a year or two down the road, and they need an immigration attorney. They're not provided one, because this is immigration law, not criminal law. They need an immigration attorney to help make the case that it's going to be dangerous for them to return home. And certainly our ministry serves a lot of unaccompanied migrant children. So now let me just speak for a minute about what our ministry does and how we support this work. We are a network of 17 different sites around the country who have staff attorneys and teams of volunteers, usually based at United Methodist churches, that help provide hospitality, childcare, welcome, and high-quality immigration legal services. Our goal is to make sure that immigrant clients have the peace of mind to know where they stand, and if they have a viable case, to hopefully help them move forward with that case. The map here shows where our clients our sites are located, and we would encourage anyone who knows of someone who needs help from Central America or any other country who's here in the United States to go to our website, njfon.org, and contact the nearest office. And if there's not an office near where the immigrant's located, we will do our best to plug them in with a reputable legal service provider located near them. Our goal is for families to be united, for people to be safe, and for people to access justice and to access the laws afforded to them here in the United States. So thank you for your time, and I look forward to questions.
Hello, and good to see you again after we had this presentation. It's wonderful to have these people from around the world and to feel the Methodist connection. And first of all, I want to thank the three of our panelists and presenters for the amazing work you are doing in your parts of the world on behalf of all of us United Methodists. Thank you so much. And I want to tell you that there's an opportunity now for you to ask questions. Those who are online, you need to go on the bottom left of your browser. You will see a small, they call it, I think it's the chat widget. And there you can type in any questions you have to our presenters. And I think that will be very helpful if you feed us with questions and the question then what you want to know. And then also, we just had the line dropped to Manila, to the Philippines, with our presenter, Rico. We hope to still get him on, but he may not be able to answer questions. But still feed us with your questions. We will also send them via email and try to respond to you later if we can't do it during this time that we are together. So let me ask here what is coming in. Let me start with Rob. You have just finished your presentation. Rob, are there any plans in the present situation in the United States? A lot of discussion about the future of migration and immigration. Is there any idea to expand your work at the National Justice for Our Neighbors?
Yes, thank you. We certainly are expanding. We're constantly working with different teams around the country who are interested in launching a Justice for Our Neighbors ministry. We're working with groups right now in Arizona, Hawaii, Washington State, North Carolina, just to name a few. It can be a long-term process to get a JFON ministry launched because in addition to needing to identify the needs within your community and forge good partnerships with other providers, we need to make sure that sites are raising enough money and creating good board leadership so that they can become sustainable. Because the last thing that any of us want is to be in a position to begin to take on cases and then not be able to see those cases through to the end, and many can be quite long. So it's a long-term process, but yes, there's definitely enthusiasm around the country to launch more ministries.
Thank you. Julia, a question for you is, these migrants come with a lot of trauma, stress, terrible stress they have gone through. What are the psychological offers you have for their needs there, and how do you deal with these challenges?
Yeah. So I would say psychological assistance is definitely an issue among migrants arriving to Italy. As I mentioned, the journey they have to make is inhuman, that they are tortured, they are detained. Nearly every woman passed through Libya has been raped. So yes, psychological assistance is an issue, and we believe that it needs to be done professionally. That's why we really work closely with a well-structured network in Italy, in Rome specifically, with associations specifically dealing with refugees and migrant psychological assistance, and public services. We have very good public services offering specialized support, psychological support for victims of torture. And I really have to stress that we as social workers, as people dealing with migrants, we can really see the great difference among those who arrived through the journey crossing Mediterranean and all the others arrived through the corridors. The difference is incredible. People arrive through the corridors, obviously suffer war and that kind of trauma, but they manage to arrive safely and in dignity here, and that makes a difference, and that's extremely important to stress it.
Thank you. There's a question here following up on this, what is really the difference between resettlement and this humanitarian corridor which you have created? Can you explain that difference a bit more?
Yeah, mainly the resettlement programs is dealt by the UN and is paid by European funds. This private sponsorship program, the humanitarian corridors, is a sort of private sponsorship program. So it's funded entirely by our funds, but the Methodist and Waldensen funds mainly, and then donations. The selection, the identification of beneficiaries, while on the resettlement program, they need to fall under the UNHCR mandate, we are more free. And for us, the importance is the vulnerability. So vulnerability is the key, is the main issue for us. And that gives us much more flexibility. For instance, in Lebanon, where we opened the first corridor, many refugees cannot be recognized as refugees by UNHCR because according to the Lebanese government, Syrians arrived after 2015 cannot be recognized as refugees, so cannot benefit by the international resettlement program. That's why our program has much more flexibility.
Thank you, thank you.
You're welcome.
Let's go to the two questions here for Rob. Rob, can you say something? Are you also active, or can you help people in South America or Central America, or what is your relationship there to our work, and what can you do?
Generally, no. We specialize in United States immigration laws, but the one example of a way we would help someone from South America is if they had a relative here in the United States who was petitioning for that person from South America or Central America to come to the United States. That would be a process that you can start here in the U.S., and so we would help that U.S. citizen or U.S. green card holder to petition that individual.
Okay. And there's a question I probably can take myself. It's about how can young people get involved? But please add to this if you have any ideas in this migration work. And I just want to share that quite a few of our Global Mission Fellows, which is a program of global ministries of 2 years for young people between 20 and 30, are involved in this. We have, for instance, Global Mission Fellows in Mexico working with the Methodist Church in Mexico along the Beast, that train that brings so many of the migrants through Mexico. We have Global Mission Fellows in Germany and in Frankfurt working with young children, unaccompanied minors who are in Germany as migrants. So there are many opportunities, and you find more on our website if you are interested to see how you can become part of this program. But you may have examples too, maybe Rob or Julia, from your experience. How are young people getting involved in this work?
We have volunteers coming during the whole year, helping us with beneficiaries in Lampedusa, in Sicily, so we from all over the world, actually. So we really tend to involve as many young people, but not necessarily only the young one, to our activities, yeah.
Yeah, and can you say, as somebody asked, do you have some statistics, how many are unaccompanied minors in the present situation in Italy or in Europe? You have any numbers on that?
Unfortunately, not by heart, but the number is increasing consistently. I mean, I think if I'm not wrong, among all the minors arriving, I think 70% are unaccompanied minors among all the minors arriving.
That's quite a high number, isn't it?
Yeah, it's an impressive number.
And you have special programs for them and special assistance?
In Sicily, we have a special reception center for unaccompanied minors. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I can just add too that Justice for Our Neighbor sites welcome young volunteers in a lot of different capacities. They would need to be over 18 to work with clients directly, but in that case, they could help to interpret, translate, help the attorneys, help do intakes of new clients. We also have volunteers who help do childcare during appointment with clients because you don't want necessarily children there during that private and difficult conversation. helping with hospitality, helping with social media sites. So there's a variety of ways people can engage.
And those who are online, you can ask these questions, and we give you responses how to connect after our webinar. So we will make that happen for you. Let me ask you, and keep your questions coming. I have quite a few here on my screen, but keep them coming. There's one, of course, to both of you. How can we make the United Methodist Church more welcoming to migrants? You have a formula for that, Rob. Or in Italy, maybe we can learn more from Italy too.
I think the church is doing a lot of wonderful things around that. I mean, certainly we have resolutions that speak to our belief of needing to be a welcoming place for migrants, supporting the work of the General Board of Church and Society and some of the initiatives that they're taking on at congregations around the United States to welcome immigrants in all sorts of different ways. Our work, we feel, is another way that people can live out that faith of welcoming migrants through not just doing the legal services, but also the bigger picture advocacy work that needs to take place in order to make sure that long-term we have laws that are just. And I know, to give a plug, there is something called the Rapid Response Team with the General Church and Society, and that's a way to plug in folks from different annual conferences in the United States with advocacy and immigration issues to help to make sure that we do have fair and just laws related to immigrants at the federal level and at local and state levels as well.
Yeah. Julia, what is the Italian experience of the local church and migrants?
I would say that the great difference to according to my point of view, that makes church and Protestant church specifically, it's welcoming migrants in dignity. And that's something linked to the experience of the corridors. I mean, the great difference is welcoming and treating them not as the assistance as charity, but as giving rights, as helping these people to access their rights. It's not a charity, it's not a gift, it's not something that I give you because I'm good, but because I believe that you are exactly as me and you have my rights to enjoy your rights. So that's something that makes a difference. And I believe that church and these Protestant churches at this moment are doing a wonderful work in Italy with the corridors. Yeah.
Thank you. Before I go to more questions, can I ask our tech people, can you give me some information whether we may get Rico online still, because there are some questions for him too. So if there's any opportunity, just write me so we know whether he can get online again to ask him some questions. But continue the conversation with you. Somebody is asking, and we have some older folks here. So how can they get involved? Because we talked about young volunteers. So what about retired people? What roles could they play? Are you using them in Italy or here with Justice for Our Neighbors?
No, we are, I mean, in many people want to go to Lampedusa, to Sicily, where we have centers, obviously, and in order to have the direct contact with people, and we, I mean, you can even give my email to these people, and I will link them to my colleagues specifically working with volunteers. So if they're really welcome.
Great. Rob?
Yes, many of our volunteers are older folks who are retired, and they help in so many different ways. Some people who were attorneys, even if they weren't immigration attorneys, come and learn immigration law and help our staff attorneys by working with clients directly. We also have people helping in the front offices of all of our sites, answering phones, filing, and interpreting or translating if they have language skills, providing food at clinics, doing hospitality, a wide spectrum. So there's plenty of ways to engage, for sure.
And Rob, following up, there's one question on, this is a very US debate now on the temporary protection, where there is a discussion whether this will be running out for Nicaragua, Honduras. Can you give us some background on this? People want some specific information on what your take is on it.
Yeah, sure thing. Well, we just learned yesterday that temporary protected status for Nicaraguans is going to end in January 2019. And what that means, there's about 2,500 or so people in the United States from Nicaragua who have this temporary protected status. That means that as of that date, which is 14 months from now, they will no longer be authorized to work here. They will no longer have a status in the United States. So we find that disheartening because many of these people have lived here 20 years. They have United States citizen children, and so they're going to be in a bad situation. Another Central American country affected is Honduras. Yesterday, we expected an announcement. Instead, it was delayed another 6 months. So what that means is that we don't yet know the future for those who have temporary protected status from Honduras. And so these folks are living in limbo. They don't know how much longer they're able to work here. Employers may be nervous. They have United States children here. They're contributing to the U.S. economy, and we are certainly advocating for avenues by which people who are here with temporary protected status can become United States citizens and live here long-term rather than in limbo. It's just not a good situation for anyone to have to be in. The other Central American country affected is El Salvador. There's almost 200,000 Salvadorans here in the U.S. with temporary protected status, and we should learn in January their fate. Currently, it expires March 2018.
Thank you. Thank you for that information. There is a question here, and I give you a second, Julia, about a success story from your organization, which you could share. And before we go to your question, let me take another one, which is really more generic. What is the UMC worldwide doing, and how do we can tap on the work of our partners around the world? One story I have here is that, for instance, the Rohingya crisis, which is very severe now. As you know, since August, over 500,000 Rohingyas had to flee under terrible circumstances from their home in Myanmar. And we have just started an appeal and working together with All We Can, which is the British Methodist Church Relief Agency, the Irish World Relief from our Irish Methodist Church, and Uniting World, which is a partner for the United Church of Australia. So it's really wonderful to see how this migration challenge brings us together around the world. And we have work in Bangladesh in support of the Rohingya together with our partners, but also through Muslim Aid, which is one of our partner organizations that has got permission to, in Myanmar, reach certain villages and be of assistance to the Rohingya. So I think this is an example how really around migration, we have rallied together and bring our resources, our knowledge together as a church. And there's a nice story in United Methodist News Service. If you go on the website, I think it came out last night, about the work in a small United Methodist Church in Bremen in Germany. And they had visit from the United Methodist News Service telling that story with beautiful photos. And you can read a bit what one small United Methodist Church in Germany is doing. So I think we are really seeing this as a great moment of unity and engagement of our United Methodist Church. But now, what is your one success story only?
First of all, I have to say that the main success is that yesterday we signed the renewal of our humanitarian corridor program with the government. So we will keep working on the corridors for other 2 years at least. And many other European member states are joining. So now we have corridors starting in France. Ireland is working on similar program. Germany is thinking about this, and the Netherlands as well. So we manage to apply our experience to open new pathways to Europe.
Great, and congratulations to this. And I mean, I just got a signal here that we have to wrap up already. So that was really exciting to talk to you. We missed Rico on this. He has this amazing story from the Philippines and the United Arab Emirates. But it was wonderful to share this time with you. I want to draw all who have participated in this to the umcmigration.org website. We will post this webinar latest tomorrow morning. It will be available, and you can share it beyond what we have done live today. And I also want to remind you, the first Sunday of Advent, December 3, is our Global Migration Sunday for the United Methodist Church. And we hope to really come all together from everywhere to pray for migrants, to raise awareness, and also to receive an offering so we can support migrant ministries related to our church around the world. Thank you for joining us. And wherever you are, be in prayer and in solidarity with the stranger. Thank you.